Good morning. I am here to talk. Thanks so much for having me. I'm here to talk to you about fighting poverty and AI, or poverty and AI. Now, when I mention this topic, I think most of you immediately, reflexively form a forecast about the future of society, a very reasonable, rational, informed forecast of the future of society, the same one made by this New Yorker cartoonist. And I think this is Autotron taking over the workforce. And so I think when we're thinking about AI and we're looking at current American society, we're seeing the enormous difficulties that we have in reducing poverty in this world. And we're looking ahead and seeing the future of AI automating away all these jobs, especially in the low-wage, low-skill part of the labor market, and thinking, this is great. This is going to make everything even more difficult for us. Thank you, Autotron. And so what I wanted to do is I wanted to tell you about two studies that I think if you look at them through the right lens, change your thinking about how optimistic to be or pessimistic to be about poverty in the future of AI in the United States. Okay. So let me tell you a little bit about the first study. The setting for this one is a call center. So this is interesting from an AI perspective because this is one of the key use cases for modern AI tools in the low-wage labor market. It's also substantively interesting if you care about the low-wage labor market. So there's something like 3 million jobs in call centers in the United States. Something like 17 million people work in call centers around the world. There was a recent Freakonomics episode, some of you may have heard, about the opening of a Discover call center on the south side of Chicago, not very far from my home in Hyde Park. They had a few hundred job openings. They advertised, and they got something like 15,000 applications the first week. So these call center jobs in places like the south side of Chicago really are the job of first choice for so many people in the entry-level labor market. And the thing that I want to tell you about is a generative AI tool that some researchers at MIT and Stanford developed that was given to call centers to give them, call center workers to give them real-time recommendations about how to interact with customers as they're interacting with the customer, okay? And then the researchers studied the impact of this on outcomes of these customer interactions using data on 3,000 call center workers from a big Fortune 500 company. Okay, so that's sort of the context and setup. This gives you some sense for what this looks like. You can see you've got a customer here that says, I'm Alex, I'm super frustrated, your thing didn't work all day, your product sucks, your customers are yelling at me, what are you going to do about it? Okay. Now, what does the AI tool do here? What the AI tool does is it takes a set of previous transcripts of customer calls interacting with call center workers, where they have the AI has customer ratings of the customer satisfaction of the call, okay? And then the recommendation that AI gives to the call center worker in that moment is based on the thing that previous call center workers have said that generated the highest possible customer response. Okay, and so then they give this recommendation to the call center worker, and then the call center worker can say some version of that if they choose. Okay. So this is, the key to running a successful call center is you want these calls to be disposed of as quickly as possible and as successfully as possible. So let me show you what this generative AI tool does in the call center workplace. To see the impact here, you don't even need a fancy regression. Okay, so this is the distribution here of resolutions per hour. Okay, so how many calls are call center workers handling in this call center? This is the control condition without the AI, and once you add in the AI, you can see that the distribution of resolutions clearly shifts to the right. Average time per call shifts to the left. Chats per hour that workers can do shifts to the right, and then share resolve that are successful clearly shifts to the right as well. Okay, so the generative AI here is making workers in this call center setting more productive. But it's doing more than that as well. It's doing more than that. And so the other thing that we can do is we can look at these productivity impacts by worker baseline skill level. Okay, and so what we can do is we have a measure of each call center workers, and we can divide them up into quartiles. These are the highest skilled baseline workers in the call center. These are the lowest skilled workers. And on the y-axis, I'm showing you the impact of the AI on the number of calls that each worker can handle. This is one of the productivity measures that we can have. And you can see that by far the biggest productivity impact here is on the least skilled workers. It's something like a 30% delta in productivity for the least skilled workers. So average productivity rising and productivity disparities and inequality is being compressed by the generative AI tool. Okay, so far so good. The other interesting thing about this, is that the workers weren't merely just reading off the AI prompts. Okay, they weren't merely just reading off the AI prompts. They were also learning. Right? They were learning how to do their jobs better. So how do we know that? We know that because there was a period of time when the AI conked out. Okay, and so the workers get these AI prompts, the AI conks out, and now the call center workers are interacting with customers, having seen the AI, but now they don't have the benefit of the AI, and you can see that the productivity gains persist. Okay, so that is study one, generative AI, raising average productivity, reducing inequality. Now I want to turn to study two. I want to describe to you some research that people at my research center at the University of Chicago did, looking at a very different sort of difficult customer service job that involves spending your days going through a lot of difficult interpersonal interactions, and that is policing. Okay, and so what we did there is we did a training program with 2,000 Chicago cops, helping them try and think about how to navigate the difficult sort of interactions that they have out on the streets of Chicago every day. Okay, and the key to this intervention was that this was not just sort of classroom training. The key is that the officers learned how to interact with people out in the world through what's called a force simulator. Okay, so an AI tool that simulates different interactions, and what the simulator does then is contingent on what the officer is doing in the moment. Now, here's why I think that's really, really important. This will be a key part of the punchline that I want to tell you about this morning. Here's why I think that's really important. Nobody learns how to play tennis by reading a book about tennis. Nobody learns how to play tennis by hearing a lecture about how to play tennis. There's only one way to learn how to play tennis, which is to play tennis. Okay? And the transformative thing about this force simulator is that the officers have a chance to learn by doing. They are learning, the AI for the police officers, they are learning by doing in the moment. Okay, so what happens when you run these Chicago cops through this force simulator? We structured this like a randomized controlled trial. We staggered the timing of when different Chicago cops went in for the training. And when they didn't, we can compare outcomes for the officers who got the training with officers who didn't. And what you can see is that there's a 23% reduction in use of force for police officers. There's a big reduction in low public safety value discretionary arrests by police officers as well, and no change in crime. Okay, so the cops aren't just learning to go fetal as part of this, all right? So the learning by doing in the force simulator is having a really, really big impact on people who are dealing with some of the most stressful, difficult situations that you could imagine in the human service sector. Okay. Here's the lesson that I take from these two studies is when we're looking at what AI is going to do to the future of society, I think that we are missing a really important positive impact, potential positive impact of AI on the world, which is to solve one of the hardest challenges in the social sector, which is how do we effectively train workers? How do we develop human capital at very, very large scale? Okay, and AI has the potential to be one of the tools for that. So to tie these two studies together, I wanted to tell you a little bit about a third project that I've been working on with some colleagues, returning back to the call center context. Okay, and so we're working with the large hospital system in the Chicago area, and so we've been spending a bunch of time in call centers. And one of the things that we heard in these call centers is, nobody calls the hospital on a good day. Okay, so you can imagine being a call center for a Chicago hospital. A mom calls. Yesterday, she got the news from their doctor that their 6-year-old kid has leukemia. The doctor says, you need to schedule your kid immediately for a bunch of blood work at the hospital. She's calling. She's distraught. She's upset. She's hysterical. You can imagine all of the surge of emotion as a parent that you'd be feeling in the moment. Now, the call center worker has to then deal with all of that. And one of the things that we hear from the call center supervisors is a human has the potential to deal with that sort of extremely difficult, fraught human interaction in a way that no automated tool ever could. Okay? So the human at their best is clearly better than anything that could ever be automated. The challenge is that the humans often have a hard time doing the human part of the job. Right? So if you imagine that you are a call center worker in a hospital, okay? So this is what your day looks like, right? I'm pissed. I'm pissed. I'm really pissed. I'm super pissed. You'll do exactly what I say. I can't believe that, that you can't help me with this immediately. I'm giving you all the information, so on, right? So this is what your day looks like. And if you've read the wonderful book, I'm assuming everybody here is familiar with wonderful book, Danny Kahneman, Thinking Fast and Slow. You're familiar with the role that your sort of automatic, below the level of consciousness, system one part of your mind plays in navigating your daily life and your interactions all the time, right? So what happens? So somebody calls and something goes wrong during that interaction. Here's one thing that we can see happens all the time in these call center interactions, and behavioral science helps us put a name on it, right? So we know what this is and we know that it's fixable. It's called catastrophizing. You're on the interaction, you're on a call, something goes wrong, your mind has an inclination to make a negative event even much worse than it really is. You can see how that totally derails the customer interaction. You can also see how hard that is for the worker themselves, too, right? You wonder why there's so much burnout in call center jobs, because people are internalizing the worst outcomes from these calls, right? Here's another thing that behavioral science tells us happens in these call center interactions every day. Call center workers personalize. The mom is calling to schedule an appointment for her kid who's just been diagnosed with leukemia. She's pissed. She's just pissed at the world. The call center workers, system one, naturally is prone to egocentric construal. Why is this person mad at me? You can see how that's hard on the call center worker. You can see how that makes the call go sideways from the customer's perspective as well. Here's another easy behavioral science problem that you can see over and over and over again in these call center interactions is the tendency of system one to quickly anchor on what this caller is like, right? So this mom is calling, she's scheduling this thing for her kid, she's distraught, you ask her a question as the call center worker, she makes a mistake. You quickly conclude this lady's incompetent. You can see how that's not helpful to her, you can see how that makes the call go completely sideways. These are just completely natural things that all of us do, but are particularly hard for call center workers given the nature of these difficult interactions, and wind up having really negative impact on the people that they're trying to help, people calling the hospital looking for help. So this is what we've been working on, and we really got stuck. So we can see that these are very important jobs. We want to improve the way that these interactions go for hospital callers, for hospital patients. We can see what the problems are, and we know that there are fixes to this. We know that there are fixes to these behavioral science challenges. We just got stuck on the problem of trying to think about how to solve these problems. How do we help people learn to overcome these natural system one foibles or frailties that are getting people into trouble? And then I realized I made the connection to the call center study that I described before. So think about what the AI is implicitly doing when it is learning what a good customer response looks like from past interactions that went well, right? If you're giving the AI a transcript of a mom who's distraught and she's calling a call center, and at the end of that call, whatever the call center worker said winds up making her feel really good about the interaction, that call center in that transcript, that caller implicitly learned how to overcome anchoring, implicitly learned how to overcome personalization, implicitly learned how to overcome catastrophizing. And when you're giving the worker a prompt for what to say, you are showing them the solution to overcome a bunch of these cognitive biases, right? So the aha light bulb moment that I had is that in many ways, this sort of AI generative tool in the call center context is the analog of the force simulator for call center entry-level jobs, right? So now we have this tool. We can diagnose what the challenges are for these difficult service sector jobs. Now we have this tool that lets us train people. And the other thing is, I'm a policy guy. I was trained as an economist. The thing that is really exciting about this to me is, we've done a bunch of social programs with the city government in Chicago. And whenever we found successes, we frequently run up against the same sort of scale bottleneck, which is the city. Even when the mayor themselves are super excited about this, the mayor says, I love it, this is great, I'm going to do a press conference, I just don't have any money to scale it. And we're not sure if we have any nonprofits or government agencies that can deliver this at much larger scale with fidelity. So you see diminishing marginal returns with most human-delivered social programs. The thing that I love about this as a policy guy is a generative AI tool scales at zero marginal cost, if you will forgive my use of econ speak, and it scales without diminishing marginal returns, right? So we have a training tool that is not just really effective at helping people learn the most difficult human part of the job, but can do that in a way that can really, really scale effectively. Okay, so at this point of the talk, you are probably expecting me to say, AI is the greatest thing since sliced bread. And I don't want to say that. In fact, I think it would be a mistake to think that way, okay? And I think the challenge for everybody's thinking about AI as it diffuses throughout the social sector is I think that we are all at high risk of making a category error, right? So to call AI the greatest thing since sliced bread, it's a category error because sliced bread is a very clearly defined, particular, homogeneous thing. Every loaf of sliced bread is genuinely the greatest thing in the world. AI is not that. It is not that homogeneous. It is not that specific and concrete. AI is a term for a massively heterogeneous category of things that are enormously different in how they're built and how they're used. And so for me, I think the right category analog for AI would be like pharmaceuticals, right? If you think about if I were to ask you, what do you think of pharmaceuticals? You would say, I don't even understand the question, right? Like, it depends on what drug we're talking about, for what patient, for what use. Am I pro or con pharmaceuticals? Just a stupid question, right? And when I think about the way to go forward here, I was saying to someone backstage, I recently came across a wonderful picture of a pharmacy in the Wild West in Colorado in like the 1890s. And on the shelf, there's a bottle of aspirin sitting next to a bottle of snake oil, right? And I think that is the AI moment that we're in right now. We are in this unregulated snake oil moment for AI, right? There are clearly downsides in the marketplace for AI right now that we need to worry about regulating away. But in the same way that there's aspirin sitting next to snake oil, there's also clearly really helpful upside here as well. So it's a regulation challenge that I see in many ways in the AI world. But there really is upside here. OK. So let me return then to where we started, and the concern that Autotron is going to automate away all of these low-skill, low-wage jobs and make the poverty problem much worse in the United States. And what I hope I've gotten you to see is that there's also a way of thinking about AI where it can be a very powerful anti-poverty tool as well. Okay. And here's what I think the key insight to this is. Okay. Here's what I think the key insight to this is the recognition that every job is a bundle of tasks right now, where some of those tasks that are part of every job vary enormously in the degree to which they're automatable versus not automatable. Okay? And the better the humans are, this is a very important insight, the better the humans are at the human part of the job, the less appealing automation looks. Okay, so think about the hospital call center. If you can get the humans to be their best selves on every call, all of a sudden the hospital finds the idea of automating away their call center really, really unappealing. On the other hand, if the humans succumb to their worst nature in these really difficult moments, you can see how much easier that makes the hospital want to automate these things away. Okay? And so the counterintuitive thing here is, for the future of the labor market, what we want to do is we want to help people get better at the most human, least automatable parts of their job. And one of the most exciting, promising ways of doing that is by using artificial intelligence, right? If I think about this as an economist, right, the possibility of using AI to make low-skilled workers more productive, this is pushing out the demand for labor curve for the parts of the labor market that we most want to be pushing out the demand curve from the perspective of fighting poverty. And you can see how success there creates this amazing potential for a double dividend in fighting poverty, right? It's making low-skilled workers much higher skilled, much more productive for workers, and it's making the prospect of automating away these jobs much less appealing from the perspective of the firms as well. Thank you very much.